Hey, what's up everybody? Stippling here with a look at set number 75121, Imperial Death Trooper, a Star Wars Rogue One character, released in the fall 2016 wave of buildable figures. This is the last set in the series, so let's hope we save the best for last. Before we get started, we'll take a quick look at the manual. The instructions run all the way up to page 44, and then we have an inventory of parts, a review of all the fall 2016 sets, and a mini poster, and that's it. As is customary for my reviews, I'm going to start things off by looking at some of the new and interesting parts that make up this set. There is a disproportionately large amount of system pieces in this set. I'm not going to go through each one. You can pause the video if you'd like to take a look at each individual part, but I just wanted to point out the sheer number of them. Most notably among the system pieces are these three 1x3 tiles with a unique printing for this set. It's not uncommon for us to get unique prints on our CCBS sets, but it is uncommon for us to get those prints on system parts. I believe these are supposed to be pockets or pouches for ammunition. This set comes with three size 1 Technic cylinder pieces. This is a recolor in black. This is the first time we've ever had these in a recolor. Previously, they've always been dark bluish gray. As with all the fall 2016 action figure sets, it comes with two of these new armor pieces. These are larger armor shells and they're more rounded than the normal CCBS armor shells. They're not denoted with a number, and unlike the Shin armor piece from the original Star Wars sets, this one comes with an armor attachment point that is not utilized in this set. We get two in black. All the sets come with two in black, so that is not uncommon. This is what has become the semi-traditional Star Wars CCBS armor piece. It's in black, that's not new. The printing itself is new, but it kind of looks reminiscent of the Luke Skywalker figure we got in 2015. It's definitely a different print, but I can't help but see the comparisons between them. We do get two shoulder armor attachment pieces in black. Only one of them has this unique print though. I don't really think this print was necessary, but I appreciate getting it anyways. This is a printed plastic piece that has to be punched out of this section. We'll see how that works out. Last but not least, we have the unique and custom head mold for this set, and it looks like it's molded in a black and dark green. That's like a dual mold there. The outer portion has black and the inner portion has dark green. The dark green also comes through at the eyes, and you can see that. There's also some little fine details of molding here along these vents. There's a vent here as well as on the sides. Doesn't look like there's any printing at all on this though, other than these two, I guess, exhaust ports in green. That green is not the same green that is molded in plastic. That is a painted on application. There is a tiny bit of green also added on this targeting device on the side here. But the rest of this is just pure plastic, and I can appreciate that. So those were our parts. There wasn't all that much new to look at, but let's hope that they use those parts well and effective. Let's get started with the build. That seems like a waste of a brand new recolor. After building the torsos in the other two sets, this one was a breeze. I'm always surprised this half-axle connection is considered legal by Lego, but I guess because of the amount of friction that this claw piece has, they can justify it. It's definitely sturdy, so it makes sense. It's just surprising. It's very uncommon for them to use half, or I guess a length 1 amount of axle to connect something. I was wrong, they do use the armor attachment points, just not the way I expected. Cool. Huh, the instructions aren't clear which direction this is supposed to be. That's actually the right way. Just have to make sure I keep doing it that way. I'm a Lego builder, not a basket weaver. And lock that all into place. They took the whole hands on a watch thing a little too literally. Weapons charged, you may fire when ready. Well, that was easy. So this is the Imperial Death Trooper, suited up and ready for battle against the troublesome rebellion. The construction process of the Death Trooper was fast and simple, relying heavily on previously established norms in the Star Wars construction line to formulate the design. And while the finished product looks respectable, I cannot help but feel a bit alarmed when builds feel as though they are regressing the creative ingenuity of the action figure line. Fortunately, the K2SO set is proof to the contrary, and there's not always a need to reinvent the wheel, but the same old builds can only work so long before you start to burn out your core fanbase, a fundamental flaw with some of the old Bionicle and Hero Factory sets. I don't want to write this guy off just yet though, so let's take a closer look at his design. The Imperial Death Trooper forgoes a primary action feature entirely, focusing instead on coverage and appearance. The Death Trooper's primary weapon is his blaster rifle, and I think it's a good looking design. I tend to enjoy how LEGO takes the core construction of these weapons and adds unique flares to each to tailor them to the specific character. In particular, I like the inclusion of the trans-red system plate for some detail on the underside of the weapon, and the stock on the back of the gun looks great as well. I'm not particularly enthralled with how flat the barrel and top section of the gun are, and I continue to wonder if and when LEGO will use the dual peg armor attachment point at the top. As with other projectile weapons that we've seen in the Star Wars construction line, this weapon has a shooting function. You just push it here and then the trigger mechanism fires off that bolt. And you do get an extra bolt which is attached on the side here in case you lose the first and for an extra shot. This storage method is a little different than the norm, using two system clips to hold the thing together. The entire bolt sits a lot further in front of the gun than the previous Star Wars characters. But that's okay, because it almost looks like it's firing, and that can be a cool action pose, or you can remove it entirely if it gets in your way. The Death Trooper's blaster rifle represents the only action feature on this character. There's no geared arming mechanism or anything like that. But he does come with a secondary weapon. Whoop, shot that off. He does come with a secondary weapon, so you can take his primary blaster rifle off, and there's no connection point to attach this to him anyway, so you basically just have to throw that to the side. The Imperial Death Trooper also comes armed with this little tiny sidearm. It's a blaster pistol, which is connected in the armor attachment slot of the armor piece. This weapon alone would not be suitable to use as a primary weapon for the Death Trooper. It's not bad, it's a decent use of parts, and it's nice to get another weapon, but it's just really small and kind of puny. This is definitely something he would have to use as a last resort if his weapon jammed. His head has a vast range of posability. He can turn pretty much in any direction he'd like, and unlike the other two figures this wave, he can actually look up, so he can look and evaluate any situation. The ironic thing is, unlike the other two sets, his weakest area is looking down. He can kind of look down, but he really needs to rely on his waist posability to really get a downward sloping position. The emptiness between the neck and the torso are covered by this pauldron and ammo clip element. This doesn't use cloth, it instead uses this thin film-like plastic that you have to fold along pre-designed positions and then attach it both in his arm socket and on his neck twice. What results is a pretty cool pauldron. I don't particularly like the way it's folded, but I think it looks okay. My concern is for children, young children especially, who want to play with this set. This pauldron would easily bend and could even rip or break. So I don't think it could withstand a lot of traumatic play experience. It's really designed for display and appearance alone. I do really like these ammo pouches though. It uses some system elements that are connected essentially through holes. So you build the lower portion and then weave it through two holes and then connect it together with this printed tile piece. I think that looks really cool. My only concern with it is how, you can already see it right now, how it's kind of flimsy. It just kind of hangs there, and it doesn't allow for full gravity to take effect. There's some resistance in the plastic itself, so it kind of dangles forward as opposed to to straight on the chest piece. I think over time, the weight and gravity will play a factor in this thing, and it'll kind of settle out in a position more comfortable and natural. But that's my only real complaint, and when you rock the figure back and forth or play with it, it makes that kind of obnoxious, abrasive sound. It's kind of a minor complaint, but it's worth noting. The chest itself is fleshed out really nicely, having this armor piece covering the front section, and then another armor piece behind that with 2 size 3 armor shells on the shoulders. So that really fills out the entire thing, leaving little to no gaps. The only gap that remains is this small area between the legs and the back. Essentially, I guess this is supposed to be a battery pack or extra ammunition, or just kind of some additional greebling. But the way it's connected on one pin, so it kind of likes to sway and wiggle around in really strange ways. Not only this can sway back and forth, but then the 3-long Technic lift arm can also rotate inside there, which can create some weird dynamics. The arms are built up more or less identical to one another using traditional CCBS ball and socket joints, as well as 2 length 5 armor shells in black. Each one is topped off with a black pauldron. The right pauldron, or in this case his left, is detailed with some custom printing, while the one on his right is not, because it's covered anyways by this pauldron. I do want to point out another little bit of asymmetry. They add a little bit of detailing on this armor shell in the form of this, I guess it's like a Wolverine claw. I don't know exactly what the original system function of it was, but it makes some asymmetry between the arms in that it's only attached on this arm and not on this arm. However, if asymmetry bothers you, this set does come with an additional piece that you can attach to the other arm, whoops, and just kind of fill that out on that side. So if you prefer symmetry, you have that option available to you. There's not too much to say about posability, as this figure can pretty much pose his arms in any way you'd like to. There's no real limitations at any juncture or in any direction, and he can really just aim his gun in any direction he'd like. I do have this frequent problem of this armor shell falling off of the armor attachment point here. I don't know if it's conflicting with the pauldron or not, but that's about the 5th time that's happened to me just in the span of a couple hours, so I definitely would look out to that as a potential problem. Moving on to the upper legs, you can see the new armor shell at work, and I believe this is the best use of the part of the 3 characters we got this fall. It really solidifies everything without exposing much, and it even kind of, you can see how the edges of the armor shell kind of reflect the edges of this armor piece. So in my opinion, this piece is really designed to mesh well with this armor shell. As we saw with Jin Erso, it looked kind of awkward and strange on her as she had a different armor shell. And then with K2SO, his problem was his bone piece underneath was too long to fill out the armor shell. But in this case, I feel like we get the best of both worlds, and it actually does a pretty good job. If it were to be any closer to the torso, we may have limited posability. Speaking of posability, let's quickly look at that. His legs are built up with just bone pieces like normal, and they use 2 friction elements, one at the top here and one at the very bottom, and we'll look at how that fits in the scheme of things in a minute here. But he can really move his legs at a pretty great range in either direction. There's just nothing stopping this. Obviously the knee does fall a little short here. It can really only bend to that point before it connects there, and you can get some really unnatural poses as well. So I'd say these legs have really good posability, and the only really gappiness comes at the juncture between the upper leg and lower leg. Moving downward towards the lower leg, there's really not much I can say about this. There's nothing special about it. This same exact build has been used countless times on the Star Wars line at this point, and it's really a good design, but it's not really noteworthy in this set. I can't really praise it for its innovative design, as it's not the first time it's been seen. The foot itself is connected with a friction extender, and that's pretty typical for these figures, especially at this size. As always, I would prefer that friction extender came in black, especially for figures like this. It really kind of jumbles up the color scheme when it switches to a really blocky dark gray in the middle of it. They also use a length 3 Technic lift arm and a pair of pins on each foot to fill out the hole inside the boot. I think it looks good. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary. I've grown accustomed to that little divot in the foot, but it's a nice thing, but again, nothing original to this figure. Taking a brief glimpse at the back of this figure, you can see he's pretty much covered at all angles. That's really a testament to this standard Star Wars build design. They've really perfected the art of coverage on these figures. If you look back to the original CCBS Hero Factory, I think it was year 2 of Hero Factory, the figures on the back were just abysmal. And to think that they've come from that to this is pretty spectacular, and I think that is definitely noteworthy, and kudos on Lego for coming this far. Briefly, I'd like to take a look at a side-by-side comparison of all the Imperial Troopers we've received to date. On the far left, we have a First Order Stormtrooper. In the middle we have Captain Phasma, and then on the right we have the new Imperial Death Trooper. You can see there's a linear progression of height from left to right, and that extends across the Star Wars line. These figures are getting taller. I feel as though the First Order Stormtrooper on the far left has the most accurate proportions for a human figure, and as you go further and further along, the lankiness and awkwardness of the figures become more and more apparent. I didn't quite realize how bad it was until I put these together. And that just about covers the Imperial Death Trooper. I think that this figure will be a popular set, in particular among children and adult collectors. The figure just looks cool, and I think it will really resonate with a lot of folks. The Jyn Erso and K2SO sets just don't have the same visual presence to compete with the Trooper. I really like the posability of the figure, how covered it is both on the front and back, as well as his primary blaster rifle weapon. I think that just looks great. I do appreciate the blaster pistol, but I do feel as though it's a little puny for the size of this figure. As I stated before, I also don't particularly enjoy the flappiness of the pauldron, in particular how it clashes with the chest piece. I feel like that's not designed well for children, and over time it's going to cause a lot of wear and damage as it hits against the chest plate. And my primary complaint above all else is just the lack of creativity in this build process. Some of my viewers who frequent my channel may feel some hypocrisy in my complaints about the Imperial Death Trooper's build process, as I was not kind to the mistakes and limitations that were present in the K2SO build. But I would counter that by saying, at least the K2SO build took chances. I would rather have Lego gamble on an innovative design and fall short of perfection than churn out cookie-cutter builds. There is absolutely nothing terrible about this set, but there's just not enough creativity in the build to consider this set great. So after seeing this build from the ground up yourself, what are your thoughts about the finished product? First, do you like the pauldron and ammo pouch design as is, or can you come up with an alternative design that might have worked better? What about the weapons? Do you like their construction, in particular the blaster pistol? Lastly, do you think Lego made the right call in continuing the traditional Star Wars build in this set, or would you have preferred seeing more inventiveness in the end product? I am interested in hearing your thoughts on the questions I asked and any other topics I may or may not have covered in this review. I hope that you found this review to be beneficial and entertaining, and I hope that you'll come back soon for the next video. But for now, thanks for watching.